Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a time when almost the entire country is now focused on the coronavirus and its implications, I think the observers of our proceedings will find it strange that the matter does not actually appear on our agenda going forward. And I wonder if it would be proper to have a discussion in this chamber which affords the opportunity for more in-depth consideration than can be afforded by a series of 20-second questions to a minister. And I don't for 1 second suggest that we should try to second-guess the health or medical response to the virus. What we should do there is simply take the expert advice and make sure that the resources are available to implement it swiftly. But it's clear that there are going to be very profound social and economic consequences of this virus, which I do believe will require a public policy response from this chamber. And I think the sooner we start in that process, the better. And I am thinking in particular, Mr. Speaker, of companies who will be affected more than others. Obviously, it will have an effect on every company. But there are some companies, particularly those who are engaged in the production of public events, for whom this will be the difference between living and dying. It will put them potentially out of business. And such events as the Edinburgh Festival, which is of significant importance, not just to the city, but to the entire Scottish and UK economy, the decisions on that are being taken now. The risks are being taken now. And those involved, I think, would take some succour if this Parliament were to perhaps not provide the details, but to decide in principle that support will be given to those people who are engaged in this activity. And on that point, Mr. Speaker, I would refer the House to my entry in the Register of Interests. A second point to the Leader I'd like to raise is concerning the Scottish Affairs Committee. The Leader will know that on Monday of this week, the House ran out of time to discuss a proposition from the Committee of Selection on the composition of the Scottish Affairs Committee, which was a rather bizarre proposal, I have to say, which suggested that the Conservative Party's representation on that committee should increase, even though its representation in the country of Scotland as a whole had reduced by 50% at the recent election. When will the House have the opportunity to conclude that debate and where we can make sure that amendments are put before the House to ensure that the composition of the committee reflects political opinion in Scotland?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Answering the second part of the question first, it is of course very sad that the SNP decided to talk out the establishment of a Scottish Affairs Committee, and it is surprising that a party that calls itself the National Party of Scotland doesn't want to have a committee looking into Scottish affairs. The government will of course deliberate and consider when it is right to bring forward a motion, but it is ironic that those who wish to seek more Scottish debate are the ones who decided not to have a Scottish Affairs Committee. And dare I say, I know a little bit about the procedures of this House, and I know when somebody is trying to talk something out, and that is exactly what happened last time. I think it would have been disorderly to suggest that it were filibustering, Mr. Speaker, but if it weren't disorderly, I think one might think it were filibustering to stop themselves having the opportunity to discuss things. It was a filibuster with remarkably little point. We're not playing just a minute to the honourable member for Rhondda. I'm trying to answer serious questions. The honourable gentleman, on the other hand, is absolutely right on discussions of coronavirus. The Health Secretary is committed to updating the House regularly. I think that is the most important way of proceeding, because we are trying to proceed on the basis of medical advice and expert advice, and giving members the opportunity to raise individual questions so that advice may be given a broader audience and more widely understood, I think is the right approach to be taking, though I hear his request for a debate. Obviously, if there is a need, or when there is a need for emergency legislation, then there will be a full debate in relation to that legislation.
Can I just